Billy Milligan, the man with 24 personalities. In the late 1970s, police in Ohio were investigating a strange series of crimes. Several women had been attacked and robbed within a short period, and the pattern seemed almost identical. A man would approach in a parking lot, force the victim into a car, make her withdraw money from a bank, then disappear. The locations were close together, the method was consistent, and investigators believed one person was responsible. When the victims looked through photographs of people with criminal records, they pointed to the same young man, William Stanley Milligan, known as Billy. He was 22 years old, had previously been jailed for robbing a pharmacy, and had recently been released on parole. Fingerprints found in one of the cars also matched him. To the police, it looked like a straightforward case. But when Billy was arrested, he seemed confused, almost innocent, as if he truly did not understand why the police had come for him. The first clue that something was wrong appeared when police searched Billy's home. It did not feel like one person lived there. Some areas were clean and orderly, while others were messy and chaotic, almost as if several people with completely different habits shared the same apartment. But Billy lived alone. During interrogation, he kept insisting that he had never robbed anyone. He did not sound like a careful liar. He seemed genuinely bewildered. He said that if he had done something, he sincerely apologized, but he could not remember it. At the time, this did not convince the police. In that era, even many doctors did not fully accept the idea of multiple personality disorder. To most investigators, a suspect who claimed not to remember his own crimes was probably pretending. Then the case became harder to dismiss. While Billy was being transported to detention, his handcuffs somehow came open. Another prisoner said Billy had unlocked them himself, quickly and skillfully, but Billy looked as if he had no idea what had happened. In jail, his behavior shifted again. At first, he seemed frightened and helpless. Then he became violently agitated and began hurting himself. Officers feared he might attempt suicide, so they put him in a restraint jacket. To their shock, he escaped from that too, took it off, rolled it into a pillow, and went to sleep. That was when the authorities called in a psychiatrist. The interview that followed turned a criminal case into something much stranger. When the psychiatrist asked Billy for his identification number, the person in front of him replied that the number belonged to Billy, not to him. Asked who he was, he said his name was David. David spoke like a child. He said he was 8 years old, almost 9, and that Billy was asleep. When the doctor asked to wake Billy, David refused. He said Arthur would not allow it, because if Billy woke up, Billy might kill himself. The doctor then asked to speak with Arthur. David lowered his head, stared blankly, and moved his mouth as if listening to an internal conversation. A moment later, he raised his head again. The person in the room had changed. Arthur spoke like a formal British gentleman, with refined vocabulary, calm manners, and a strong interest in science and medicine. He was also described as needing glasses, while many of the other identities did not. Arthur was only the beginning. Another identity named Alan was friendly, talkative, artistic, right-handed, and the only one who smoked. Tommy was an escape artist, skilled with locks, radios, saxophone, and landscape painting. Rajan was a 23-year-old Yugoslav identity, strong, aggressive, skilled with weapons and fighting, and said to speak Serbian and Croatian. When Rajan appeared, Billy's world reportedly became black and white. There were children, including David and a 3-year-old girl named Christine. There were female identities, quiet identities, angry identities, frightened identities, and identities with different accents, talents, and memories. Over long observation, doctors identified 24 personalities. 23 had names. The youngest was 3 years old. The oldest was 26. Some were accepted by Arthur, while others were hidden or sealed away because he disliked or distrusted them. The transcript describes Billy's inner world as a dark room. In that room, all the personalities stood in a circle. A beam of light fell onto the floor. Whoever stepped into that light controlled the body. But not everyone could step forward freely. Arthur acted as the manager, deciding who was allowed to enter the light. When a switch happened, Billy's eyes would go blank. his mouth would move, and it seemed as if the personalities were discussing who should take control. This explained why one identity could act, speak, draw, smoke, fight, or escape, while another identity later had no memory of it. To the doctors observing him, the personalities were not random moods. They were stable, distinct, and internally organized. At the center of the system was Billy himself, the core personality. But Billy was not awake most of the time. According to the transcript, his memory stopped in high school, at the moment he had tried to take his own life. After that moment, the other personalities kept him asleep because they believed waking him could put them all in danger. For months, doctors could not speak directly with Billy. Eventually, after long effort, Arthur agreed to let him wake. When Billy opened his eyes, he panicked. He asked whether he was dead and where he was. Doctors had to slowly explain that he was in police custody and that they were trying to help him. Billy was the only one who did not know the other 23 personalities existed. The others knew about him, and many of them knew about each other. The roots of this story went back to childhood. Billy was born in 1955, on Valentine's Day. His father had been an entertainer, but by the time Billy was born, he was unemployed, drinking heavily, gambling, and under great pressure. He later died by suicide when Billy was only 3. Billy's mother remarried, and the transcript describes a painful, unstable family life with mistreatment from stepfathers. The story presents many of the personalities as responses to fear or trauma. When Billy was 4 and could not bear being scolded, a deaf child identity named Sean appeared, blocking out the sound. When he was tied up or trapped, Tommy emerged, the personality who could escape restraints. When danger appeared, Rajan took over. In this telling, each identity was not just a character. Each was a survival strategy, built around a specific kind of pain. The crimes themselves became almost impossible to understand as one continuous act. The transcript explains them as a chain of switches. Reagan, facing poverty and crisis, decided he needed money. He went out. But in a parking lot, the personality shifted to Adelana, a quiet 19-year-old female identity. She spoke gently with a woman. Then the personality shifted again to Kevin, the identity associated with planning crimes. Kevin forced the victim to withdraw money. On the way home, the personality became Reagan again, who suddenly found himself holding cash without remembering how he had obtained it. Back home, Tommy appeared and spent the money. Later, Reagan returned, discovered the money was gone, and went out to get more. The same cycle repeated. In that version of events, different identities took different parts of the crime, while none of them held the entire sequence. This created the question that made Billy Milligan famous. Who is legally responsible when the body commits a crime, but the conscious identity on trial claims no memory or control? Doctors, lawyers, and prosecutors examined him. According to the transcript, even people who originally doubted multiple personality disorder became convinced by the consistency of the identities, especially their accents, skills, handwriting, and behavior. In 1978, the court found Billy not guilty by reason of insanity, but he was not simply released. He was sent for psychiatric treatment and could not return to society until doctors believed the condition was under control. The case became one of the most controversial examples of mental illness, crime, and the law colliding in public view. Treatment focused on integration. The goal was not exactly to destroy the other personalities, but to unify them into one stable self. Doctors chose the identity called the teacher as the organizing personality because the teacher was said to possess the memories of all the others. The teacher was intelligent, humorous, and able to explain the system. But this raised an uncomfortable question. If Billy was the original core personality, was it fair to suppress him and let the teacher live as the unified self? Billy's memories stopped in high school, and he was fragile, easy to overwhelm, and likely to fall asleep again. The teacher had the knowledge needed to function. After roughly 10 years of treatment, the court eventually accepted that Billy's personalities had been integrated enough for him to return to society. Years later, the story still did not end neatly. In a later interview, Billy reportedly said that the personalities had not disappeared. They were still there, but he could keep them from stepping into the light. That control was painful. He feared losing control while sleeping. He even worried that hearing one of the names might wake that identity. Billy Milligan died in 2014 at the age of 59. His case remains controversial, unsettling, and difficult to categorize. To some, it shows how the mind can divide itself to survive unbearable experiences. To others, it raises questions about memory, diagnosis, suggestion, and the courtroom's ability to judge a fractured self. But the most haunting question is simple. What makes a person one person? The body, the memory, the name, the law, or the voice standing in the light?